Seems like we might not be having no damn 2026 season. WNBPA statement regarding strike authorization vote. Thursday, December 18th, 2025. The players have spoken through a decisive vote. With historic participation, our membership has authorized WNBPA's executive committee to call a strike.
The league's response to the union's statement was unusually direct by professional sports standards. Ownership said it was difficult to understand claims of resistance to change when the league is proposing immediate and substantial salary increases along with a new, uncapped revenue-sharing framework. Then came the most striking line. The union's characterization fundamentally misrepresents what is happening at the bargaining table. Strip away the formal language, and the meaning is unmistakable. Ownership is accusing the union of lying about negotiations, not misunderstanding them, not disagreeing with them, misrepresenting them. That distinction matters. In labor relations, public accusations of dishonesty are a nuclear option. They signal that private dialogue has failed. They also suggest ownership believes public pressure is now being used dishonestly to force concessions. Once that belief sets in, owners become far less willing to compromise because any compromise feels like surrender to manipulation. This also reveals something important about ownership's confidence. They would not make such a statement unless they believe documentation, timelines, and financial data support their version of events. In other words, ownership is daring the union to prove its claims under scrutiny. This creates a dangerous dynamic. If fans believe the union, owners look exploitative. If fans believe ownership, players look unreasonable. Either way, the league's reputation suffers. Sponsors, broadcasters, and partners don't like uncertainty, and they dislike public dysfunction even more. What makes this worse is that the league framed its offer as transformational. Immediate salary growth, new revenue-sharing mechanisms, structural changes. From ownership's perspective, being accused of resistance after offering those changes feels insulting. That emotional component should not be underestimated. Once negotiations become about respect rather than numbers, they harden. Pride becomes a factor, and pride is expensive.
That means the players have said, look, go, push the strike button whenever you feel necessary. If they not doing what we want, push that damn red button, blow it up, strike. It says time and again, the players' thoughtful, reasonable approach has been met by the WNBA and its teams with resistance to change. Damn. Wow. It says they have provisions that are unfair, restricting players for nearly 3 decades.
The WNBA Players Association has officially crossed a line that labor disputes rarely step over lightly. This was not a symbolic protest, not a warning shot, and not a vague gesture meant to gain leverage. This was a formal vote authorizing the union's executive committee to call an actual strike at any moment. According to the union, participation was historic, and the vote passed by an overwhelming margin. That alone would be enough to send shockwaves through the league. But what happened next is what turned this situation from tense to explosive. Within minutes of the announcement, league ownership responded publicly and aggressively. This wasn't the usual carefully worded corporate statement meant to calm markets or reassure fans. It was a direct rebuttal that accused the players of misrepresenting the facts. In blunt terms, ownership called the union's claims dishonest. That matters because once accusations of lying enter the conversation, negotiations stop being about numbers and start becoming about credibility. This moment represents a complete breakdown in trust. Labor negotiations can survive disagreements over money, benefits, or structure. They cannot survive when both sides openly accuse each other of bad faith. That's where the WNBA now finds itself. The strike authorization signals that players believe talks have reached a dead end. The owners' response signals that they believe the union is deliberately distorting reality to win public support. What makes this especially dangerous is the timing. This is not happening in the middle of a season, when pressure from fans and broadcasters forces compromise. It's happening in the off-season, when leverage is uneven and consequences are easier to absorb for ownership than for players. That asymmetry is what turns a strike threat into a genuine existential risk. The phrase, "we might not have a season," is no longer hyperbole. It is now a realistic outcome being discussed privately across the league. Owners are signaling that they are willing to let this escalate. Players are signaling that they are prepared to walk. Once both sides adopt that posture, the margin for error disappears. This is the most serious labor confrontation in WNBA history, not because of the vote itself, but because of how openly hostile the responses have become. The moment ownership accused the union of lying, the dispute stopped being procedural and became personal. And personal labor wars tend to end with casualties.
Put out a response. So the owners are not going away quietly, and this is what they said. We are aware that the players have voted to authorize the WNBPA Executive Committee to call a strike if the Executive Committee decides to take that step in the future. While we acknowledge the players' right to authorize a future work stoppage, we strongly disagree with the WNBPA's characterization of the current state of negotiations, which fundamentally misrepresents the ongoing discussions taking place.
At the core of this conflict is a fundamental disagreement over the league's economic future. Ownership has proposed a model that would allocate less than 15% of total league revenue to player compensation. The union countered with a demand for 30%. That gap is not incremental. It represents two entirely different philosophies. Ownership's model reflects a league still fighting for financial stability after decades of losses. The union's model reflects a league they believe has entered a growth phase deserving of redistribution. The problem is that both cannot be true at the same time. The WNBA has historically operated at a loss. That reality shapes every ownership decision. Revenue sharing assumes surplus. The WNBA has rarely had one. Asking for a fixed percentage of revenue without addressing operating losses forces ownership to choose between increased losses or structural change. This is why negotiations feel stuck. Players see growth and want a fair share. Owners see debt and want cost control. Neither side is irrational, but the distance between them is enormous. And that's what makes this moment so dangerous. If neither vision bends, the league doesn't just face a strike, it faces an identity crisis. Whether compromise is still possible remains unclear. What is clear is that this dispute has moved beyond standard labor friction into something far more volatile.
They're calling the players liars again, just like they called out them for not responding when they sent the comprehensive offer and the players didn't respond for 3 weeks, and they said, hey, we've been sending these players offers, they haven't been responding to us, but they're going online and acting like we're not negotiating. No, they're not negotiating. The owners just complete.
The Players Association followed up its strike authorization with a statement designed to frame the conflict morally as well as financially. They described their approach as thoughtful and reasonable, positioning themselves as measured actors attempting to modernize a league resistant to change. They accused ownership of trying to divide players, undermine unity, and systematically undervalue their contributions. Those are not neutral accusations. Those are the kinds of claims unions make when they believe the system itself is working against them. But what truly escalated the situation was ownership's refusal to soften its response. Instead of acknowledging frustrations or promising renewed dialogue, the league issued a statement that directly contradicted nearly every claim the union made. This wasn't damage control. This was confrontation. By refusing to concede even rhetorical ground, ownership sent a clear message. They believe the union's narrative is false, and they are no longer willing to let it go unchallenged. That decision fundamentally changed the tone of negotiations. When one side accuses the other of deliberate manipulation, compromise becomes far more difficult because any concession can be interpreted as validation of dishonesty. This exchange highlights a deeper problem than money. It reveals that both sides are now fighting for control of the public narrative. The union wants fans to see players as exploited and disrespected. Ownership wants fans to see players as mischaracterizing generous offers. Once negotiations become a PR war, resolution slows dramatically. What's also notable is what ownership didn't do. They didn't deny the players' right to organize. They didn't attack individual athletes. Instead, they attacked the accuracy of the union's claims. That's a calculated move. It shifts the debate away from emotion and toward factual disagreement, where ownership believes the numbers are on their side. This is why the language matters. Words like divide and conquer and undervalue imply malicious intent. Ownership's rebuttal implies distortion. Those positions are mutually exclusive. Someone is lying or someone is wrong, and neither side appears willing to retreat. At this stage, even if a deal is reached, the damage to trust will linger. Negotiations are no longer just about a CBA. They are about whether the league and its players can coexist without viewing each other as adversaries. That question remains unanswered and increasingly uncomfortable.
Is putting in money and they've been making zilchy back. Bro, this is nasty work, y'all. I ain't gonna lie to y'all. This is nasty work. The owners are calling these players liars. They just responded 15 minutes ago. This is crazy. This is crazy, man. The owners are like, nah, y'all cap. They calling cap. Here it says, owners have offered the players.
This isn't the first time ownership has accused the Players Association of misrepresenting reality. Weeks earlier, the league claimed it delivered what it described as a comprehensive proposal. According to ownership, the union did not formally respond for 3 weeks. During that silence, players continued to publicly claim negotiations were stalled. From ownership's viewpoint, that silence followed by public criticism looked strategic. It appeared as though the union was shaping public opinion while avoiding direct engagement. When ownership finally addressed the delay publicly, it triggered the same defensive response now playing out again. This pattern matters because it establishes a narrative of bad faith on both sides. The union believes ownership drags its feet and refuses meaningful change. Ownership believes the union delays responses while using the media to apply pressure. Both interpretations cannot be true simultaneously, but both can feel true to the people experiencing them. What's undeniable is that communication is broken down. Negotiations are supposed to occur primarily behind closed doors. Once both sides begin litigating the dispute in public, resolution becomes more difficult, not less. This pattern also explains why ownership's latest response was so sharp. From their perspective, this isn't a sudden escalation. It's a continuation of behavior they believe has been happening for weeks. Trust, once broken, is difficult to rebuild. Right now, both sides are operating as though trust no longer exists.